On March 25th, 1931, there were about a dozen people traveling in a boxcar riding across country from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Memphis, Tennessee. This trip traveled through Alabama. A group of white teenagers who were on the car with a group of African American men, somewhere around Scottsboro, Alabama, decided that this train car was for whites only. So a fight broke out. After losing the fight, the white boys went to the sheriff and accused the men of raping two white women who were on the train. This sounds like it should be easy to clear up. We asked the white women on the train what happened, but the women on the train confirmed the story of the white boys. We would later find out, after one of the women retracted her story, that they confirmed their story because it was a federal offense to practice prostitution across state lines, and they were in a boxcar. That is not to say these women were prostitutes. It is to say that being accused of prostitution at that time could have very well ended their lives. The public defender who defended the 5 African American men was so drunk he could barely stand up during the case, and apparently he did not do very well. And the men were found guilty and given the death penalty. But see, the problem is there's some holes in the story. Not only would one woman recant her story, the men weren't all even riding on the same car. And the doctor in this case found no evidence of rape. This is when the NAACP and the Communist Party got involved, because these were only some of the issues with the case. There were so many issues with the case, in fact, that an all-white Supreme Court in 1931 would demand that they retry the case. And even then, they would still be found guilty, and the case would again go to the Supreme Court. The case ended up going to the Supreme Court 3 times. Each time after the retrial, it came back with the same response. After the last time, the court upheld the decision but reduced the sentence to life in prison. Well, they were actually given anywhere between 80 and 105 years each for a thing that did not happen. One of the men, Haywood Patterson, escaped prison in 1949. He was found in Michigan in 1950, and the governor of Michigan, when he was found, refused to let Alabama take him back after exploring the precedent of the case. He figured that he'd served enough time for something that didn't happen. In 2013, the state of Alabama issued a posthumous pardon for all of these men. Huddy William Ledbetter, who would later be given the nickname Leadbelly for his rock-hard abs, was contemporary with the Scottsboro Boys. In fact, he wrote a song about them called The Scottsboro Boys. In a 1938 interview and recording of the song, Leadbelly encourages African Americans traveling in the South to stay woke, keep your eyes open. Now, see, this is the first usage of the word woke in recorded history that we're able to pinpoint. And it was directly connected to racial prejudice and police violence. But Leadbelly was not trying to create a movement or a philosophy. He was simply recommending that black men be constantly vigilant when traveling in the South. It was to remind them that their life was always on the line when it came to people of authority, and vigilance was one of the most important tools for their own safety. As he said, stay woke, keep your eyes open. Remember, Leadbelly was not trying to create a philosophy. He wasn't commenting on capitalism, politics, or any ideology. It was his way of saying very simply, be aware. It wasn't philosophical. It was just linguistic. William Melvin Kelly, an African-American man, wrote, a New York Times op-ed in 1962 called "If You're Woke, You Dig It," with the subheading, "No Mickey Mouse can be expected to follow today's Negro idiom without a hip assist." In the article, he goes on to talk about an ad he sees in a New York subway car. One of the ads, sponsored by a local bank, says, "This is your train, take care of it." And it was about litter, it was about cigarette ash, it was about just keeping tidy. The sign went on to translate into 23 different languages. Kelly says it was number 18 that attracted his attention. It said, "Hey cats, this is your swinging wheels, so dig it and keep it, boss." The name of the language, Beatnik. Kelly goes on to say that much of the African American vernacular of the day had become common American vernacular, especially with countercultural people like beatniks. But in his estimation, the beatniks would be willing to probably say that this is borrowed language. The bank who sponsored the ad just didn't realize that. This begins a conversation about cultural appropriation, not the usage of African American slang by white people, but the crediting of the creation. As we know, language is fluid. It changes, and for many marginalized people, not just African Americans, it becomes a code. See, Kelly goes on to say that this language was never formalized, and in many ways causes exclusion, but is also necessary for security and protection in the African American culture. Of course, he would go on to say that it can also inspire pride, especially in not just because it was something they created, but other people wanted to use it. And that pride shines when they would see white people obviously struggle to use the vernacular and in fact often use it wrong. Kelly puts it this way in the article: "The Negro's pride in the idiom is that a man who watches someone else do ineptly what they can well, the Negro laughs at white people who try to use his language." He likens this to jazz musicians watching people who haven't experienced much jazz clap on the first and the third beat. At this point, many of the words would go on to swap meaning, to begin meaning the opposite thing that they initially meant, and become tradition as that case, so that it could be you could tell who was using it right and who was wrong. Like the word jive, which initially was a very positive concept, which became something else in the future. But to continue down a woke history, in 2008, Erykah Badu released a song called Master Teacher. And the song illustrates to an African American that even when you're tired, broke, exhausted, broken, and losing everything, you still have to stay woke, to be aware of your surroundings. Because when you're not woke, you're putting your life on the line. In 2013, the phrase "stay woke" became a rallying cry for Black Lives Matter, renewing the historic African American meaning to the word, to be awake. But not just focusing on police, but not just focusing on police in systemic violence, but entire systemic history. Reminding each other that it doesn't matter how tired they are, you must stay woke to the systems of oppression that cause marginalized communities and poor white communities constant exhaustion. Instead of engaging to recharge, one of the most people in poverty will come home from a hard day's work with 2 and often 3 jobs, sit and sleep, or pass out in front of the television after eating McDonald's or Wendy's, because when you spend every moment worrying about paying bills, sick kids, your boss, and work, etc., easy answers make more sense than in-depth engagement. And the systems imposed upon this fuel infighting between groups that, if coming together, would create a systemic upheaval and change that, let's be honest, would even make our bastion of liberalism uncomfortable. It takes work to stay woke. But see, remember, language is fluid. Being woke is not a philosophy. It's the past tense for the word wake. And even then, it's not, nor has it ever been, an ideology, only a word that indicates awareness, as Martin Luther King Jr. once encouraged that people ought not sleep through the revolution. He was telling us to stay awake, stay aware, don't be lulled to sleep or lulled astray by easy answers. Language, however, adapts, changes, and evolves, especially as it enters the mainstream. Woke becomes a buzzword and begins to be attached to people, to ideologies, to organizations, and then later to corporations. It became a philosophy. After a while, someone went and added a nest to it. Being woke went from the need for black people to be aware to supporting certain right speech in an agenda that was not intended by the people who initially used the word. One word for this is appropriation. You could also say co-opting. One of the things I like that is often said is it's colonizing. And as a liberal in a liberal church who supports liberal ideas, I would love to blame individual politicians, news channels, when I hear some nonsense about a woke mafia. Problem is, I can't. Oh, they're implicit in this form of colonizing, but they're not the root of it. So, to go back to the root, or at least give an example of it, let's move back to 2017, the Super Bowl. You know that game people love to get together and watch so they can rate the commercials? Imagine, close up, a Pepsi can is being opened. It sprays a hydrating mist that just makes you want to drink something. A cellist begins to play as a beat is put behind the music. A Muslim photographer struggles to find the perfect picture, and Kendall Jenner, in a blonde wig, is doing a photo shoot. As this happens, a crowd begins to walk by carrying signs. Look, it's a protest. The ethnically ambiguous cellist sees the protest. A protest filled with the most beautiful protesters I've ever seen. I mean, they were hot, except in the case of sweating, because none of them were sweating. And I suspect they weren't sweating because of all the cans and bottles of Pepsi that were available everywhere you looked. Now, see, I've never been to a Pepsi-sponsored protest. Usually I was really covered in sweat, and a lot of it did not look very good at the end of it. But you know, a protest where no one drinks water, a protest full of that many beautiful people, and I mean Hollywood beautiful people, not what we mean when we say beautiful like they're a loving person who's very empathetic and trustworthy, but like people who could be on magazine covers. And I will be honest, they didn't look like the protesters I was used to. Anyway, the crowd walks by the cellist. He joins. And he puts the cello on his back because that is his identity. The Muslim photographer is in her hijab, which is how we know she's Muslim, but she's not that kind of Muslim. She's one of the cool ones. She's in a jean jacket, fancy sneakers, and a nose ring, and she grabs her camera because that is her identity. Then, oh look, hip-hop dancers at the protest. Wait, why are there dancers? Oh, look, I see the cellist has started playing, and some Dawson's Creek-looking dude comes out with a guitar. And then the dancers dance. Everyone's smiling. Kendall Jenner, frustrated with her photo shoot in blonde wig and like 80-inch heels, sees the crowd and wonders, what is this? The cellist, no longer playing for the dancers, walks by making eye contact. Gives her a small nod that says, come on, this is going to be woke. He doesn't say it. He doesn't have to. It's just that kind of nod. And all of a sudden, Kendall Jenner casts off her wig to reveal beautiful, long, straight black hair that does not look like it has been under a wig all day. And wait, now she's in hip street clothes. Denim, white t-shirt. She grabs a Pepsi, walks powerfully through the crowd to the front, and look, oh no, the police in body armor, ready to show down against these protesters and whatever it is they're protesting, because it's not really very clear. But don't worry, Kendall got this. She casually, with a smile on her face, looks to the police officer, hands him a Pepsi, then backs away into the crowd, because it's not about Kendall. It's about being woke. The police officer drinks the Pepsi, smiles, nods, gives the other cops a nod, and all of a sudden everything's okay. And folks, that was woke. Now, I will note that the day after the Super Bowl, the ad was removed from television. I had to go find it on YouTube because it got such bad press. But it introduces a concept that is common in America. See, it was woke, but not the woke the way that Lead Belly, Erykah Badu, and the way Black Lives Matter use it. It's better. It's a better woke. It's a corporate woke. A woke that says you can trust us. We have your best interest at heart. It's a woke that doesn't mean stay awake or pay attention. It's the kind of woke that says we hear you, but instead of addressing your concerns, we'll let you know everything you need to know because you can trust us. And another term for this is actually woke capitalism. When I hear the talking heads and politicians talking about wokeness, a woke mafia, political correctness, critical race theory, I can't help but notice they aren't talking about these things in their historic context in relation to cultural needs and expectations. They're talking about what addressing those needs takes away from them. They utilize a logical fallacy that is often called a straw man. Something, a person, an organization, an idea that represents not an organization that represents not the original context, but the context and narrative created by the opposition. The straw man represents, but is not the actual thing. A woke mob, critical race theory is defined by conservative governors, has nothing to do with the actual context of critical race theory or what Lead Belly meant when he said woke. The problem is we as progressives, white liberals, open up the door to this, and not intentionally, with the best of intentions, because we want to help, but we do open the door. Because it's easier to change language than systems. Because we end up being more concerned about how we're perceived than our actual self-awareness and our awareness of the situations around us. Perceived awareness with right words is much easier than doing the depth of the internal work we must do to understand and come to grips with our part in history of a system that continually benefits us. Erykah Badu, the African-American woman who sang Master Teacher and brought the word to the modern era, would even go on to say in 2023, the word does not belong to us anymore. It's easier for corporations to change their Facebook icon to a rainbow than address the systemic issues. It's easier for them to donate to important social campaigns than make changes so that the campaigns aren't necessary. Martin Luther King Jr., a year before his death, would say that we got our gains at bargain rates during the civil rights movement. It didn't cost anything to give black people the vote. It helped the economy to let black people sit at lunch counters. But the issues we need to confront now are going to cost the nation billions. His point is that ending poverty doesn't happen cheaply. And I would add, stopping climate change does not happen in a corporate environment without affecting the bottom line. Stopping worker exploitation does not happen without affecting the bottom line. Stopping systemic violence against historically marginalized communities does not happen without affecting the bottom line. It's beneficial for them to donate because it's a tax write-off. It's beneficial for them to donate and tell you they donated because it makes them look woke. It's beneficial for them during Pride Month to change Facebook and Instagram images because we're more inclined as progressives to say that's a company I can get behind, even when they continue worker exploitation, buying from countries that use child labor and refusing to do what it takes to actually be truly carbon neutral, not just to pay for carbon neutrality. It is more affordable for them to speak woke than be woke. The title of the sermon is A Radical Welcome, and I have yet to use the word welcome. Now, some of you might appreciate the history lesson on the term woke. Its historical use and misuse in popular, private, and corporate culture. And there's more if you're interested in finding it. You might have gotten a chuckle out of the tongue-in-cheek description of a soft drink commercial. But what does it have to do with being welcoming? And some of you might even go out after this and check out Leadbelly or Erykah Badu, which I recommend. But what does it have to do with being welcoming? We get lots of visitors because of what we say, but they only stay because of who we are. There are side effects to growth. There are the ones we like stability, fiscal stability, vibrant experience, new friends, new connections. But then there are side effects that can make us uncomfortable. New people come with new ideas, which we say is great, unless those ideas affect the service, the liturgy, and the music. Ideas about how we can serve the community, how we can use our resources, unless they conflict with how we're already serving the community and using our resources. In a view into our blind spots, which I'll be honest, nobody likes someone to tell them about their blind spots. One of the most beautiful things about Unitarian Universalism is that we create a bouquet of different flowers. We encourage diversity. We affirm that difference is beautiful. We want to help building a better future and a better today, and deep down we are willing to do it. Even here at Hope Unitarian Church, the conversations I have with you, the conversations we have together, the conversations I hear in the board and all the different, what are they called, those things people get to, committees. Yes. Next week, those committees will tell you what they're doing, and I want everyone to get involved. I want everyone to come, because that's how we change the world. And our church, Hope Unitarian Church, wants to change the world. But as human beings, it is easy to colonize the people we meet instead of changing and growing because of a new relationship. We as humans try to get them in line with what makes us comfortable. We like to be comfortable. We want you to be yourself. Tell us what you'd like to see and what you'd like for us to do differently so that we can tell you why we can't do it that way. See, growth is change. Welcome is creation. And it should make us new every morning. When our church grows with new members, it becomes a different place. And if we are truly welcoming, radically welcoming, this church will look different next year than it did last year. Not just because of the faces in the congregation. Our values create this amazing space to change systems of oppression. We know this. That's why we have a generosity recipient. That's why every Sunday part of what comes in goes right back out. It's why we stay connected to action and to TMM. But our comfort can be one of the most limiting concepts to growth. Our comfort needs us to be the same as we were last year. Homeostasis, to look the same, to sound the same, to love the same. Our comfort will drive us to fear that we're going to lose the thing that makes us who we are if we change anything. When filtered through fear, change means that they're telling us we are wrong and that we are bad people. Change filtered through fear feels like an attack. Change filtered through fear can even feel like theft. Which is why it's important for the progressives to identify and affirm right thought and right visibility. But there's no harder pill to swallow than realizing after a lifetime of work, I don't have it all figured out yet. That's why it's important for many of us to embrace the woke straw man. It's a badge. It says we're one of the good guys. And if nothing else, we want to be one of the good guys. But if we're truly living up to our values, we won't have to tell people we're woke. We won't have to tell ourselves we're woke. We will listen to the voices of the people who come to us. We will listen to the voices of the people that we're trying to help and work with them instead of for them. We will listen to those voices and we will embrace the differences and the changes they bring. And will be something at that point that's just hard to describe. Because we will know learning is something that is lifelong. That none of us have it figured out. Not even me at a whole 44 years old. That culture changes faster than we do. And sometimes we have to keep up with it. And that if the arc of the universe truly bends towards justice, it means we will have to bend as well. Because revelation is not bound, and the search for knowledge and truth is eternal. We are perfect just the way we are, and yet at the same time, we can always become more. Something new. And that's okay. So basically, my point is this. Being welcoming is being awake. Awake to the needs of others. To the knowledge that even though our comfort is important, sometimes it can get in the way and become part of their oppression. Thank you so much for listening.